explicitly says on his site that he's posted elsewhere. So if you do see posts on other sites, other forums, take them with a pinch of salt if they've got Roy's name on. And yeah, just be aware of what you're saying and how it can come back to you, because people do like to misquote. And I think myself and Roy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Roy.
You said something about separation between technology. You have to remember, technology affects all sorts of things now. If you're talking about the scanners at the airports, or if you're talking about information being delivered and net neutrality and censorship, all these things depend on technology at some level. And the FSF has always been a very political movement. And everything about free software in the GPL sense or in the BSD sense, they all have some ideology they try to push, and that's already kind of a political thing. So to try and say that this is purely a bunch of people working 9 to 5 in an office and trying to produce a product and competing with the product, it's a simplification of how certain people will use technology. Try to use it as a hobby, or try to hack on a Kinect to trying to get it to work with their computer. There is something about a fight of control and technology or information or things as they used to be before computers. That's how you can determine who gets which information and how you fight wars in some cases, even the Enigma code and I'm trying to think of all kinds of inventions and how technology advanced one certain country in wars over another. It was really about technology, and technology affected which countries at the edge. When you're talking about the arguments we have over operating systems, it sometimes tends to go towards issues like software patents, which is a completely legal issue. It's a legal matter to deal with. And you also deal with issues of like freedom and control and centralization and diversity and unity, or all these things that are, you see it even within the GNU Linux community. There is lots of political disagreement. Some people say, well, bring on Photoshop to Linux, we want to use that. And some people will say, well, we have to use only free software, and we have to get rid of firmware as well in the kernel. And that's more of a ideological thing. That's the source of some friction. I think the places where it gets impolite is sometimes certain people are being hired by a company to promote a certain agenda. And I don't know if people know this, but especially in 2009 and 2008, I wrote lots of posts that present proof and evidence from all sorts of places that Microsoft is hiring all kinds of people to do all sorts of things, including trying to kind of bully people and to bribe people and to do all kinds of things to push their agenda. The reason people are being pushed out of their jobs sometimes for not choosing Microsoft is because Microsoft is working some people to try and get them fired. And we have lots of stories like that. We have an index of stories like that. Now, there is also the thing about shareholders, and that's to separate this from the so-called shields and how companies hire PR agencies to try and push their agenda on the web. You have the shareholders and you have the ISVs who depend on a company like Microsoft, especially. I think Apple has some fans, but that's a separate thing. But in the case of Microsoft, he has a very large number of companies that kind of fear a world where their business no longer is of much use because it depends on the Windows so-called ecosystem. And they also tend to fight. I hear from all sorts of people. They are the ones that tend to go into forums and try to aggravate and try to push all kinds of fight against Linux and Macs and so on.
It's probably a topic which we can cover in more detail in another episode, because I think it's an episode all of its own. What we'll look at now, if it's all right with you, Roy, I've got a bit of feedback which moves on nicely from what we've just been talking. If you're happy to move on.
Yeah.
Yep. Right, well, moving on from the unpleasant side, which was the trolls, I had a nice little message given to me, which is actually on my site at the moment. It was a chap called Manny who has found the game editor review very interesting, and he says, thanks to the review, my kid's going to be very happy. He and I are going to enjoy learning how to create casual games without having to boot into Windows and stuff. So there's one person that's liked my review and liked our suggestion of game editor as being a platform to try. And then I've got... Sorry, did you want to add in?
I probably want to go through at least one set of comments I have in my site.
That's lovely. Well, I've got...
Sure, you go first.
I'll do... Because I was going to do my good and bad, so that was my good one. And then we've got the bad one. Somebody's made a couple of remarks to me. The first one being, they obviously frequent the IRC chat room, because I made a comment before we even started this project that we shouldn't use episode numbers for the show. And I was going to have the slogan, this isn't a soap opera, which was implying that we weren't going to have episode numbers because we weren't running a soap opera. I changed my mind, obviously, and spoke to Roy, and we agreed, obviously, we've got a numbering system for two reasons. Firstly, because it's you're able to put the show into some sort of logical order, and if people are listening to more than one of the show, they at least have some resemblance of order in the numbers that follow the show name. But the second reason was I didn't like the idea of having that type of slogan, because to say what that type of comment would be to cheapen the other excellent audio casts out there, and having run this now for 5 episodes, the amount of work that goes into it is quite astounding. It's not simple as certainly the more established audio casts put themselves across as. So it's for those two reasons. That was the first part of what he challenged me over. The second part was a comment he made about the Xbox 360. He firstly said, how can you have a campaign of hate against Microsoft when you own an Xbox 360? Well, I'll answer that in 2 parts. First thing, I don't have a campaign of hate against Microsoft. I challenge what I see as inappropriate or inadequate compared to what I'm using. I express my views and my personal belief and my honest held opinion of what I think is the best software solutions for me. And it's not a campaign of hate against Microsoft. It's not a campaign against hate against anybody. So I'll correct him there. And secondly, yes, I do own an Xbox 360. I also own a PS3, and I used to have a Wii until I gave it away to a relative. I don't believe I can comment about a system properly unless I've had experience of it. My wife has a Mac, which I've mentioned many times on the blog. So I feel unable to comment about a piece of hardware if I had no contact with it whatsoever. I've had a Microsoft relationship for a long time. In fact, Microsoft relationship at work, I can't get away from Windows. So I feel qualified to say when I'm using Linux at home that Linux is the best system for me, because I use Windows for 8 hours of the day and then come home, obviously, and in my free time I'm using Linux. So that makes me feel qualified to make my opinions. I hope that has suitably answered this person's question, but I'm quite sure in some of the news groups we'll be reading other allegations in the future of things that I have and have not said. So, sorry, Roy, over to you.
Yeah, well, it's not so much a comment as far as a ongoing conversation we have. I'll start by just saying that one of the issues that interest me is how statistics are being used I don't want to say anything about operating systems, but I want to say certain companies provide statistics, and they provide statistics in some ways which are more useful to some companies than to others. And I have a background in statistics. It's to do with my job as well, and I know how to use statistics to show something false, and I know how to identify someone else trying to do that, because that's what we do mostly, trying to discredit other people's work and to show our methods are better. And one of the things you find with all these companies is that they take very improper samples. They take very vague methods. In some cases, they don't tell you the methods. In some cases, or almost in all cases, they don't give you the sample because they don't want to give you private information of people surfing the web or using some certain program for obvious reasons to do with privacy, and having to ask for permission, and there were all kinds of scandals before. So there is this one company called StatCounter. Now, a nice person called Al has sent me something which I posted as an article on the site, he was very happy about me posting it. What he's basically done, he's go through StatCounter's methods. He's went through the website and he tried to study what they do. What StatCounter does is basically produce some charts with, operating system shares and browser shares, and we have all